Welcome to Marketing Speak, a series of interviews and monologues featuring thought leaders and industry practitioners in search engine optimization, e-commerce, and online marketing. Here's your host, Stefan Spencer, SEO expert, author, speaker, consultant, and internet entrepreneur.
In this episode, number 151, you're going to learn how to productize and systematize your business. In other words, we're going to achieve scale through marketing automation and simplification. Our guest today is Greg Hickman. He's a marketing funnel strategist and founder of System.ly, a marketing automation consultancy working primarily with service providers, consultants, and coaches to productize their services and systematize their delivery. Greg has helped implement systems for businesses such as Entrepreneur on Fire, John Loomer, Chris Ducker, and Nerd Fitness. Greg's a blogger, podcaster, speaker, and his work has been featured on the Huffington Post, Copyblogger, Social Media Examiner, Business.com, and more. Greg, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so let's talk about, first of all, how to escape from launches and from the one-to-one consulting and hunting for the next prospect.
There's a lot of questions. It's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question, yes. Actually, I've heard you speak before, and I know this is a topic that's near and dear to your heart. You want people to escape that grind and use systems to do that. So why don't you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So for me, it all starts with simplification. And we throw out the term productization a lot as well. And I say that because, most of the work that we do is with service providers, agency owners, not necessarily people that are just selling courses or whatnot, but there's a hands-on component to the work that they do, and they actually work with clients. And those people typically, and we were one of them for a long time, we were in a situation where everything we did was custom, and creating systems for things that are custom is really hard. I really don't recommend you try it. We did. It was a disaster. You create documentation for literally everything you do in your business, and you have thousands of documents that you never use because you never do the same thing over and over again because everything you do is custom. So the effort to simplify or productize has become the catalyst for growth, for predictability, profitability, and the ability to create few systems that can really give us the most leverage as the owner. And a lot of the people that we deal with, they're either the owner, they're the only person in the company, or they have a small team. And so what ends up happening is, new client comes in, Greg goes into fulfillment delivery mode. And while Greg's doing that, all sales and marketing stop. And you're kind of jumping back and forth. And usually what that leads to for many business owners is that up and down roller coaster of revenue. Oh, I'm done with this project. Now I got to go hunt for the next prospect because I have no systems that are helping me bring leads in. And
so feast and famine.
Yeah, feast or famine. I literally just recorded 2.5 hours of video on this content before we even got on this call. So it's flowing. So
it's very
feel
fresh.
Free to just say, Greg, shut up as we go. That thing right there, actually, I came to a realization this morning that, okay, so yes, this is the problem. We get, as business owners, often we get stuck in the fulfillment and the delivery of the thing that we do, so much that we're not selling. And when we see that Facebook ad or the whatever ad, that's we'll bring you more leads. Here's how to use Facebook ads. You need a webinar funnel. Sounds really appealing because at the surface level, it's oh, well, when I'm done with this project, I won't need to go hunt for the new lead because I'll have the webinar, I'll have the thing, right? And so it sounds really appealing, but what we realized very painfully, and a lot of our clients have realized, is yes, you do need that system, but for most service businesses, agencies, people like that, it's not the first thing that you need to do, because what ends up happening is, okay, well, now you have this system going, but you can't say yes to any of those clients because you have no bandwidth to actually serve them. And so it comes back to, okay, well, we need to get you out of fulfillment as the owner And the fastest way to do that is to simplify what you do, make it go from 80% custom to 80% repeatable, standardized, duplicatable, so that you can be the person selling for your business and not turning down the leads that are coming to you. Because so many of the service providers we deal with, it's like, I hear it all the time is, Greg, if you gave me my perfect client and they're like, I will give you exactly what you want me to give you and I'll give it to you right now, I still would have to say no because I have no bandwidth to serve them because of the other stuff we're doing. And like, that pains me so much because it's like on the surface, we think it's leads and opportunities that we need, but we actually need the room to serve those opportunities. And so simplifying your offer, productizing it really unlocks what sort of system you need on your delivery, even sort of, I'll argue, business model that then lets you go into, let me create systems around sales and selling because I can take on more clients.
Okay. So it sounds like there are a couple of things that you need to do. One is when you simplify, you need to stop taking everybody and say no to a lot of the opportunities and focus on the things that are going to be repeatable, duplicatable, right? But you also need to take the things that you decide that you're going to continue with and productize those, systematize those so that they can scale better than they do now, right?
100%.
Okay. So what is the secret to or process to productizing something once you've simplified down to 1, 2, or 3 core products, core services, and you let go of all the rest, all the custom stuff? What's the secret to productizing and turning this into a scalable system?
Yeah, literally, we could talk about that for 90 days. And we do. But like, I'll kind of extract some really high level things. I mean, we created this process that we take our clients through. It's called Extract Your Expertise. And when you go through this process, you kind of come up with what I'll call your proprietary process. It's the, here's how I solve my ideal client's problem and give them the result that they want. That turns into what we call the signature service. It is your go-to process for solving your client's specific problem. And depending upon what that looks like, your signature service either becomes your flagship service offering in and of itself. Sometimes, depending upon what our clients do, you can kind of divide it up either into 2 or 3 different packages that complement each other, that allow clients to come in at different areas. And so, but things that we need to do before we even do that. And I think a problem, I was just having a sales call before this with a prospect who literally, I'm going to read you some of these quotes. I'm like, you just gave me like my organic content for the next like month. She said things like, and maybe some of the, maybe this is you guys, some people listening, like, I'm bad at turning away business. I'm too nice. I take whatever budget the prospect has and make it work, still doing the same work. So she has clients that pay her $3,000 a month, and the client that pays her $500 a month actually gets the exact same thing because she was afraid to say no to lose the revenue.
Wow.
And she said, so much of my business has come by way of referral, which in most cases is great, right? But she would feel bad that like turning them down because they came from someone else she knows. So she felt bad not serving them. So I can't turn down the money, so I'll just add an extra hour to my day. I was like, how many hours are you working? She's like, easily I average 10 to 12 hours a day. And I was like, well, how do you like take time off? Like, how do you do those, like do the things that you should do to like actually grow your business? Like think strategically. And she's like, I literally don't have any bandwidth for that. And so all of those things start to like come together and create this really big storm that will destroy you and burn you out. And what kind of, as she was saying these things, it really dawned on me that like so much of the problem stems from like, all right, back to when we wanted to create our business, we were like, yes, creating a business, be my own business owner, uncapped earning potential. I'm the one in control. Like we do it for freedom, take time off when I want to. But very quickly, especially in the service world, agency world, like you get away from that because you need the money and you have to serve people, and you start serving people. They ask you for the next thing and you're afraid to lose that revenue. So you say yes. Your offering becomes saying yes. Like your agency product, your agency service is just the word yes. Like it's not, I'm solving any specific problems over. It's like, I'll do whatever I can to solve any problem you have because I need the money that bad.
And that's how you end up with 12 to 14-hour workdays.
100%. And so why does that happen? And when you talk about like, well, how do you build a business? A lot of people will say, well, like find a market that has a lot of pain and figure out what problem they have and serve them. And like, that's how you get started. And while that may help to get started, I think it also fails to leave out some really important questions that if you don't have the answers to, you get stuck in that spiral. And those are things like, yes, the market and who you want to serve is important. But I think secondary, tertiary to a couple other questions that I think are important, like, well, what sort of life and business do you envision having 10 years from now? Like, do you want to hit 7 figures? Do you want to hit 8 figures? Because that question alone will drive your business model, period. So like if someone comes out of the gates and says like, yeah, like I know that like there's something deep down inside of me pushing me towards this, like, even if it's ego, I want a 7-figure business annually. Like there are certain business models like this custom done for you stuff that are really difficult unless you're charging really a lot of money and working with only a few clients. And that's kind of hard, especially if you lose one, like the opportunity goes away really quickly. So like you need to understand like, well, what are you trying to achieve? Like often it's really like understanding that like, hey, your business is supposed to serve you, not the other way around. Like, yes, your business is service, but design it in a way where you can serve people and where in a way where your business actually works for you instead of you working for your business. So if you don't have that clarity, like it's easy to jump into these models where like we just say yes to everything. So what do you envision? The second is like, what sort of money are you making in your business? What sort of money are you taking home? Right? I know a lot of business owners that do 7 figures and they still walk away with only $100,000 a year. Like that doesn't sound that appealing to me. Like for like seeing how much they're generating, but actually how much they keep. A lot of people talk about we're doing X in revenue, but they don't talk about profit. And like you could have a $10 million a year business with very little profitability, and you could have $500,000 a year business with a lot of profitability. And depending upon who you are, you might take less revenue for more profit, right? And so
I totally relate to that, I'll tell you, because with my previous agency, we got up to over $6 million in revenue, and I was only paying myself a few $100,000, and
which is
all
great
the
money.
rest was going back into the business, and I was not maximizing my own income, and then I never got around to that. Eventually sold the business, and then the opportunity's gone because the business is gone. So that opportunity to maximize my income, I should have been thinking about the whole time instead of just maximizing revenue alone. Yeah,
totally. And so, understanding like what sort of business do you want, like from a revenue perspective, like really starts to, again, like refine, well, what type of business models are appropriate for me? Which leads into kind of another question is like, well, what sort of team do you want? I mean, you probably already know this, and something I harp on a lot. For some reason right now with like, there's businesses out there, course creators, the information business, which if you do it right can be a great business. I don't think a lot of service, like people that are true service providers are teed up to make the most of that opportunity. But you have to like ask yourself, like, what do you want your team to look like? What do you want your culture to look like? Literally, there's like certain, if you come out and say like, I'm cool with only doing $250,000 a year, yeah, you can probably do that with like a VA or like one or two contractors part-time. But if you're sitting here saying like, I want to go 7 figures, I want to go 8 figures, there's really no way that I've seen unless where you won't be burnt out, doing it without some sort of team, especially some sort of like full-time team. So and to be honest, like, why do it alone? It's so much more fun to do it together. At least like I like get so much enjoyment out of having a team. And I think a lot of people have like this negative view on team. But what do you want your team look like? Like, how many people does this team have? Are you guys all remote? Are you in an office? Like, what's your culture look like? Like, some of those things are really important that impact your business model and your plan to grow. Possibly even how you deliver the service that you deliver, right? There are certain things that I would love to do more frequently in our office, but our team is fully remote. So in order to pull that off, like, I either need to fly my team here like way more frequently than probably makes financial sense, or we need to start building out a couple more key people here. Like, those are questions that you need to ask yourself. So you ask that question. Then you need to ask, okay, well, like, what does my product service offering look like? Like, what do I love doing? What do I hate doing? What am I really good at? Like, asking those questions all before you ask, well, then who should I work with? Like, you should ask all those other 4 questions before we get to who is my ideal client, because you should have an ideal client that wants and needs the things that you want to be doing. And I mean, more often than not, that is a possibility where I think we start backwards, and it's like we go into these markets and we get clients that are like, oh yeah, like, well, I have clients that are in the like, there's a couple franchise locations. I got a makeup artist. I got a software e-com company. I got a couple agencies. I got a lawyer. And it's all because like that was just who came to them and they had to say yes. Right. And
that idea applies in so many different areas. Like, for example, I pitch to speak at conferences, and what I was doing before is just thinking, oh, how can I add value for people? Create pitches and session abstracts around those topics, and then get speaking gigs. Sounds great, except I wouldn't get nearly as many leads as I was hoping for by doing that. And then I pitched at PubCon, for which I got in at. I'll be speaking at several months. The exact session that would be full of my ideal target audience. I'm like, why did I not do this before? Why did, like, for the last 8-9 years that I've been speaking at PubCon, did I not think to just pitch only the exact session that would be full of my exact target audience? And I got in and I got the exact session I wanted.
So can I tell a quick side story on that?
Yeah, by all means.
Because I accidentally felt like people are like, oh, you were able to do this because like you had all these connections. I hear that a lot, like, because I thankfully have some really awesome friends that became my clients early on in our business Systemly. But like, they fail to remember that like for 3 years before that, I had a completely different business where I was constantly hitting my head against the wall. And we did mobile marketing. And I came out of a big retail company. We were trying to do mobile marketing. And I knew who I wanted to work with. I'm like, I want to work with all these online business owners. I'm like, none of them are capitalizing on this mobile opportunity. But like, I'm just inspired by them. So I went to New Media Expo. I met Pat Flynn's, the John Lee Dumases, Amy Porterfields, became friends with all them. I got on their podcast because they're like, man, nobody's talking about mobile. Like, we need to hear about this. Like, it's getting big. Like, we don't know anything about it. You're the expert. Like, be the expert on our show. So I'm getting out on these audiences. Like, I'm getting awareness about like, hey, they know my name. Mobile's the thing. I'm connecting with I'd love to work with Amy and Pat as my clients and all those people. Like, those are the types of people. I don't want to work with small retail companies anymore, but I had nothing to offer them. like there was no mobile service offering that I was an expert in that I could give them that they needed right now. And I was like in this position where I was so in love with mobile as the solution. And I was so in love with who I wanted to serve. I didn't know what their real problem was. And when I found it out, the solution wasn't mobile. And it took me a while to figure it out. And I was like I spoke at a lot of conferences. I spoke probably 30 times in a year and a half at all of the wrong conferences to not get any clients in this mobile business. And it hit me where I'm like, man, I'm at the point where I'm selling to people I don't want to be selling to, which are retail companies, because those are the people that are talking about mobile, yet they don't even really want it. Long sales cycles. And I was like, you know what? If I could work with someone like John Lee Dumas, like, what would they need? I'm like, oh crap, I'm using Infusionsoft. Like, he uses Infusionsoft. I actually am fascinated by marketing automation. I'm actually pretty decent at it. I learned more about it, and then I went to him and I said, hey, can I do this stuff for you? And he was one of my first clients. And like the kind of why that makes sense is like, I went 3 years sitting in front of my ideal client, but having nothing to offer them because I was trying to force a solution down their throat that they didn't need. And so like I kind of had some of those pieces. I knew exactly who I wanted to serve. They just didn't need what I was serving, right? And we spend so much time just like going after the market because apparently that's where the money is. Like, I could have spent another decade going after retail companies on mobile easy. They're just starting to pick up on it, and I'm X years out of the mobile space. So don't just chase, like, don't build your business around a market just because someone tells you there's a huge opportunity, especially if it's working with people that you really don't care about.
Yeah, if you're not passionate about it, it's a waste of your time, waste of your life.
The second it gets hard, you're going to bail.
All good points. All right, so
all of that is we simplify. What do we do, right? And with the productization part, your offer can't be your product can't be yes. It needs to be result driven, right? Outcome driven. It can't be, here's the proposal and we're working X hours on these things, which is like just deliverable. It needs to be, hey, when we go through our process, this is the actual outcome that you're going to get. And so I think it's creating solutions around solving problems versus giving clients a menu of services and letting them pick all of the tactile things that they currently don't have in-house to Band-Aid getting the solution that they want by just directing you to do the work, right? Which is what a lot of agencies become is, hey, we do all these things, and you present the proposal and they're like, yeah, but like that's a little bit more expensive. So how about you remove these 3 things? And then it goes into you didn't offer them a solution. They took what they wanted from you. And now you have to go deliver this thing. And out of the gates, they have control. Out of the gates, like, they're the ones dictating what happens, and that's usually what leads to scope creep. That's usually what leads to the lack of profitability, devaluing yourself, losing money, all those things. So how do you say, hey, I'm going to package up these maybe 1 or 2 things that I'm really good at that I know when you do them together gets a specific result? An example, I mean, like one from us, and I'll give one from a client. Our first iteration was, wow, a lot of the custom work we're doing, we're building out webinar funnels. I think there's a lot of people out there that need webinar funnels, and a lot of people that we'd like to work with helping them build webinar funnels. So we went out and saying, hey guys, we have this new offer where it's X dollars, and at the end you launch your new live or evergreen webinar funnel. And we sold it for more than like we would have if we just tried to do it like hourly in our other plan, which gave us huge spikes in our cash flow. And people knew exactly what they were getting. The sale was easy. The sales cycle was short, like 1 or 2 calls. And we became known for that thing, which creates demand, which makes people coming to you organically where you don't need to spend money on. It makes marketing easier. It makes fulfillment easier. It makes hiring easier by saying, hey, we build webinar funnels for online course creators. Like, that's what it started out as. So by even just creating that package, my marketing became a spear instead of like a fishing net in the entire ocean, right? And example with one of our clients, his name is Mayrab. He came out of a company that is like, I think 9 figures, and they like it's like between 8 and 10 figures. And he was like their marketing go-to guy, and he wanted to break out on his own. And he was connected to the entire market of like online marketers, coaches, consultants, like that whole space. And he knew way more than most of them. And he could have easily gone and tried to compete in a market where there's tons of other people charging way less that know way less. And it's just, he'd be like one man on a mountain of many. But when we dove deep and we really started extracting his expertise, we came to realize that the people that need his offer the most and that he enjoyed working with were those really obscure businesses that like they came to them and they were like a subject matter expert on a particular thing that wasn't marketing. And they're actually really successful, but they're capped. Like maybe they're doing $1 million a year. They should be doing 10 and they know it, but they're lacking like the marketing stuff. And that's what he knows. So he like created a package around specific marketing initiatives for these really interesting kind of rare subject matter experts. And like he uses messaging around that. And in the first 10 days of July, and he started maybe like when we started working with him, it was maybe like the last 1 or 2 weeks of August. While having a baby, he did 60 grand in revenue in the first 10 days of July by like knowing exactly who he wanted to serve with the package that he was capable of delivering, really just trimmed down to a specific deliverable and result. And it's like when you have that amount of clarity and control, and you can say, hey, look, you probably experienced these things. Well, I can solve that with this process of mine. The sale becomes more of like a, hey, do you need it? Can I help you? Is it a good fit? Awesome. Let's get started. Eliminates proposals, eliminates all of that back and forth and all of that whittling down of the proposal that you sent that inherently just puts the client in control from the get-go.
Yeah. And they cherry pick you and you lose your profit margin.
Exactly. And that's what happened to us. We were selling these retainer-based relationships. And when I was like, man, like the next logical step is to hire one more person. That person can manage X number of clients. And I'm like, man, I feel like so the path to growth is for every X clients, I need a new person. I'm like, man, that doesn't sound like what I want to do. And so we started looking at the numbers. I'm like, holy crap, 6 of these 10 clients we're actually losing money on, like bleeding us dry. Oh, and with those 6 clients, our team's spending about 80% of our bandwidth on those clients. It's like, oh, well, if we just sell one of these new packages that we've been selling, it can wipe out all 6 of the ones that are killing us. And that was like the aha moment. I'm like, man, our math is off. We don't truly know the cost to fulfill because it changes every time. So like, that's why proposals usually stink, is because it's a custom thing every time. You're kind of making these educated guesses, and the slightest derailment of scope creep totally puts you in the negative. So when you constantly deliver the same thing over and over again, you can actually develop a system to deliver it with leverage where you actually have that freedom, where you can maintain those margins and get really good at delivering something that you do it efficiently. And that's where kind of the growth potential comes. And once we did the math, that's what we realized was like, oh, 1 new client over here replaces 6 and we get our time back. No brainer. Let's go. And from there, we grew like rapidly.
Yeah. So I have a situation that sounds quite familiar here because I have a retainer-based relationship with my clients, and it's very much deliverable focused. In fact, I even say, it's about a deliverable a month, and we do regular calls and et cetera, et cetera. So there's some things around that, implementation, oversight, and so forth. But the main thing is a deliverable a month, whether it's a technical audit or a content audit or, let's say, a link building strategy or keyword strategy. And it's not connected enough to the result. It's not result driven as you were describing. So what would you tell me to do in my situation then? So take a specific example with me and give me the prescription for success here.
Well, where I'll go with this is like, I think this is where some people get this notion of productization wrong, is like, hey, this package, you get X hours, this package, you get X hours, and this package, you get X deliverables or X units. It's an okay place to start, and we were there at one point too. But what I find ends up happening is, yes, while you have it pretty contained, people start cherry picking those little logistics. Like, oh, well, like I need more than 5 calls, but I don't need 10. So like your next package is 10. And it's like they get hung up on like the how it's delivered versus like actually getting the result. And I think people like for whatever reason, have packaged their stuff in a way where it sets them up for those conversations. Like, I remember this was 2 or 3 years ago, I was at a seminar, and the leader, the coach who was kind of guiding the event, was telling this story and basically said, like, look, like, if the situation was, prospect says to the coach, well, like, how many calls do I get when I work with you? Like, is it 10 calls? Is it 12 calls? What is it? And the coach walked over to that prospect and put his hand on his or her shoulder and said, well, let me ask you a question. And just let's assume the result is get to $1 million a year for the sake of the story. He's like, would you rather me sit here and touch your shoulder, and by touching your shoulder, you get to $1 million a year, or would you like to have 12 calls first?
That's great.
And they're like, well, duh, touch my shoulder. And basically what he said was, cool. So you understand now that it has nothing to do with the number of calls that we have. Like, you have to trust that we have the process to get you to $1 million. If it takes 3, are you going to ask me for a refund on the ones that we didn't use on 12? And the person was like, yeah, I probably would have. Right? It was a deliverable. It was a thing that you said was included that we now didn't need. Right? So I think when we structure our offerings that way, it seems nice when it's like, oh, like 1 campaign per month. Well, what happens when, like, they don't need a campaign that month, or that campaign is overwhelming them now? Like, now there's 12 campaigns a year. Like, do you even need 12 campaigns? Like, most of the businesses that I know that have gotten to over $1 million have one funnel. Like, imagine I was like, hey, like, we're going to launch 1 new funnel a month. Like, it's a waste of time, right? So,
I went down that very waste of time path because I hired a guy who helped me build out a whole set of funnels and Infusionsoft and did all the stuff. And his idea was, let's do a different online course each month.
Yeah.
And let's do a live webinar that matches the topic of this online course. It won't be too overwhelming of a course, so you'll be able to produce it in each month. And then we'll sell the membership site as this huge benefit where you get a new course every month. So you want to be part of the membership site, so you get all that great new content. But people can enter the funnel by attending the webinar, buying that first related information product. And I did that for 6 months, and it was exhausting. And I did not like massively increase the size of my membership base because of this. I just had a huge ton of work on my hands that made it hard for me to focus on my core business because I was doing all these courses.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, I think it's like, what does the client care more about? Like, solving the problem or achieving a specific result, or like the actual deliverables that they're getting? And I think too often we are creating our packages around, like, X campaigns or X calls as an example. And that when we do that, sometimes we force it upon, like, we actually are the reason why the client has disconnected from the actual result of, say, in this example, achieving $1 million a year, right? So it's like, because really at the end of the day, if they want that million bad enough and they're willing to do and take your guidance, it shouldn't matter if it's 10 calls or 1 campaign a month. Like, if someone said, like, yeah, we know that it's 1 campaign a month, then you're going to do the 1 campaign a month. But like, they only will do that if, like, they're tied to the result, right? So I think sometimes you just got to go back and, like, reconnect your client with the actual thing that they want and be like, hey, like, I know we said it was a unit per month. What if I can get you there in 10 less units? Like, how about we do less and make more, right? Is kind of circles back to all of this really comes down to, like, let's do less, but more of the stuff that is actually important that's going to get them the result, right? And so when you package up your offer, the outcomes or the results that they get from those offers and should move them closer, if not get them to the result that they're looking for, right?
So how are you pricing your Productize services based on the result?
Yeah. So we have 2 programs, and the first one is 90 days, and it's all about laying the foundations for everything we've been talking about on this call, right? Look, people want the funnels, they want the webinars, they want all of that stuff, but there's a handful of things preventing them from that. It's all starts with the game plan. So like we help them go through a process that we've created that gets them to their productized result. Like now you have clarity on what the thing is that you should be delivering. And once we have that, we can help them turn that into a product plan. Maybe it's one offer, maybe it's a front end and a back end, maybe it's 3 packages that are all available up front. It really depends on the client. And we, based on what numbers they want to hit and what style of business and culture and team they want, we help them kind of get a clear perspective of, well, this is the type of business model and team that you're going to need to deliver this to achieve that number that you want. And we go back and forth on that a little bit. So the first experience for us is we want the client to know exactly what their model is, how many clients they need to hit specific targets, and what the team needs to look like to remain in those certain profit margins to be scalable, right? Everyone talks about scale. The problem is we need to be scalable before we can scale, right? So we're setting the foundation to be scalable based on how much they want to scale. And then after that, we go into a 12-month engagement where it's, hey, these are the different activities that you need to be doing over this period of time to get closer to that result. So each and every 90 days, it's, hey, like, here are the activities that you're working on that are going to move you closer to that result. So as an example, like most of our clients that come to us, I'd say more often than not, they're like low to mid 6 figures and they want to get to 7. And the structure that they currently have will not allow for that. So we need to like pare down, productize, put together the game plan so that we can scale back up. Once we have the foundation in, usually they'll go and they'll recoup their investment multiple fold over. And then it's like, okay, well now we really got to start deploying a lot more systems. You got to start hiring some people, onboarding those people, which is tough to do, in a course, like where I just try to teach you how to do it because you'll never actually do it. And 2, tough to do in like a 30-day period. So like that's why we go into, hey, like if you're committed to building this business, like pretty sure you're going to want to be in business for more than a year. Well, it's going to take some time to find these right people, hire them, onboard them, and start having them work within the systems that we're helping you launch. So we kind of come in as kind of a coach over the course of the next 12 months and move them through specific activities that we've used ourselves and with our clients to continually systematize their business and elevate to the CEO level. Kind of the 90 days, like, let's set the foundations for you to be a like high 6-7 figure business with the clarity on your structure, team, et cetera. And then let's actually start growing you to that.
So it sounds like you've figured out, like you took that process that you described earlier, extract your expertise, and then turn that into a signature service. Mm-hmm. And you've done that for your clients with the service that you just described.
Yeah.
How do you scale that for, let's say, 1,000 businesses? If you've got, let's say, 100 clients now and you want to scale to 1,000, or if you've got 1,000 clients now and you want to scale it to 10,000, is it fully scalable? Because it sounds like you've got a little bit of one-on-one in there, right? Whether it's in workshop environments or what, but it doesn't sound like it's super scalable to millions of people.
Yeah, and we don't need it to be. So like, I don't need 1 million clients, and nor do I want 1 million clients. Like, our result is getting a smaller number of people to $1 million businesses, and how we're impacting the world is through our clients, right? Like, I can't impact 1 million people alone, but like if I can help my client impact a few 100,000 and then another client a few 100,000, and through us helping them serve more of their client, we've now impacted a lot of people. So like, I want our clients to be able to serve more clients. And when we start working with a few 100 clients a year, we will achieve that. And doing so, we can also be a multiple 7-figure business ourselves. Okay. And arguably even an 8-figure business.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. And so I think, that goes back to the beginning, right? Like, I don't want a lot of clients. I want in the hundreds, not thousands. I mean, over the course of my lifetime, we'll have thousands, but like in a given year, we're probably working with, I'd say, somewhere between maybe 10 to 30 clients a month in kind of our 90-day experience, and rolling up into the point where we have maybe a couple hundred in our 12-month, 300 in our 12-month. I think that like we could get to that number and like be a 10-figure business. So, or sorry, like it's, yeah, an 8-figure business, like 10 million. So yeah, back to like, what are you charging? What sort of result are you creating? What sort of impact do you want? How big do you want that impact to be? I mean, I have a mentor of mine who has a team of like 7 people with like a couple contractors, and they're close to an 8-figure a year business.
Yeah, that's amazing.
They have a couple hundred clients on an annual commitment, and then they have a couple other lower level things that have hundreds going through every couple months, right? But they built up to that. And I think back to like, oh, well, cool, like coming out of this experience, we have these 3 packages. The best way for you to get there might be to only focus on one of those for the next 12 months. I talk about this a lot. It's not my own IP or anything, but Clay Collins he was interviewed, and he basically said the fastest way for any business to get to 7 figures is to focus on one target market, essentially one avatar, with one offer, dialing in one conversion method, using one traffic source, and do that for 1 year. And that is the fastest way for any business to get to $1 million. And when I heard that is like when we were already on the path to productizing, but we productized it even more, and we went down to one offer. Like we had, and that which is our 90-day program. And I heard that in January, February of 2017. And so we launched kind of like the beta version of what is now our flagship program called Foundations around late February of 2017. And we brought in a couple people, took a handful of months off from selling. And by December, we had our first 6-figure sales month and put ourselves on the $1 million run rate.
That's awesome. Have you heard of the book, The One Thing?
I've heard I love the book, The One Thing, and
okay.
Essentialism. They should like be sister books.
Okay. So all these great resources will, of course, include in the show notes, including those 2 books. So you've got this process where you extract expertise and you turn that into a signature service. That when you were talking about that reminded me of, I learned this particular method from Taki Moore, but he learned it from Matt Church, and that is pink sheets. Are you familiar with that?
I am. Taki is one of my coaches, so yes, very familiar with pink sheets.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and I'm curious, who's the coach that you referred to that's only got 7 people working for him? Was it Taki?
It was at the time. He has more now.
Okay, so it was Taki you were referring to
He's got like
a few
a
minutes
team
ago.
of like 10 or 12 people just in the Philippines, but he has a handful of like US based people. His sales team is US based. But like he's an example of like, I actually don't know exactly where his revenue is at now, but like if you kind of ran some rough numbers, like he's like mid 7 figures for sure. Team definitely under the size of 20.
Yeah, Taki is great, and I was in his black belt program for a while. Mastermind.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's great. It's really, really great. Are you having a good experience with it?
Yeah, I love it. He's one of the best teachers that I've ever seen.
Yeah, and he's just so relatable and easygoing and so smart. And yeah, it's a great community he's built up, and lots of systems and lots of team competencies that surround him. So he can just take just a blank sheet of paper. He takes these big sheets of butcher paper and a big marker, and then just starts drawing something, and then he hands that over to somebody, like takes a picture of it, sends it to somebody on his team, and boom, they turn it into a landing page or into a product or into a seminar.
Yeah, and here's the thing too, like as you said, I look over and I have my butcher paper because he put me onto that, and like I like fell in love with analog, and my team hates me because I've made them change project management tools like 15 times until we realized, I'm like, wait, Greg hates the project management tools. he sends pictures of sticky notes, and then the team puts it in whatever freaking project management tool they want. And that's how we operate. It's like I literally send photos of sticky notes. And like once I learned that from Taki, I'm like, oh, like that was hindering me in the beginning. And I just realized, oh, well, like there's just another way around this. Like, here's how you create a system to support how Greg thinks best, which is what he was doing, right? So yeah, big kudos to him on that. The thing that I think is interesting there, though, is like, and this is really more of just like having met him and seen it. I don't know this is for a fact. So this is like my observation. Even if there's no course or whatever that you would learn how to be able to do that in like even 60 days, right? Like, it's like, that's a thing that like, as you build your team, as you iron out and grow your business, these are systems and things that get created by growing the business, right? And which is why like Black Belt's a 12-month program. Like that's why like I want to get the foundations in place so that I can work with you for the course of a year, because there's tons of systems that I know you're going to need probably in month 4 that you don't need right now. And I don't want to hold those back and say, all right, well, you got to spend X dollars now and then come back. Like it's just, let's commit to growing your business together, because I want to give you as much of me as possible. So like, let's go all in on this, because you're not going to find like your solution delivered to you on a platter that's like in 30 days, which is, I think, what a lot of people need. And I think when it comes to like systemizing your business and growth and bringing people on, like you just have to understand that that's a process that comes with time, right? And only through going through some of those motions do these systems even evolve. Like I say, like we always say the word system, right? And like, yes, there's, I think, some fundamental systems that can apply to most businesses. But when you get into those, like, oh, like here's how the owner works at his genius, like Taki, you expose yourself to holes that need to be filled with a system. And that system might only be relevant for him.
And it might not be any tech either. It might be just as simple as butcher paper.
Yeah. So like I say system, and I look at like process, people, structure, then automation and software, right? I think a lot of people think that delegation or automated, like automated means technology. If I'm not the one doing it, that's automated to me. Like, so you can automate things with people, right? You can make their lives easier with software and automation, but like, as long as you are not the person doing it, for all you know, it's automated. So if that's a person doing it, cool, automated. And just like with delegation, people think, oh, well, I need to delegate to a person. While yes, that is one path. And actually, I would argue that you shouldn't delegate to a person. You should delegate to a role. When you delegate to a person, you're trying to match a role to someone's specific skill set. When you delegate to a role, the role should have a certain amount of skill, like certain skills to achieve the role. But you can also delegate to a process. You could delegate.
One thing that I learned from Trivinia Barber recently on a previous episode is to delegate the outcome rather than the task. So that was a key distinction too.
Yeah. So all those things, like as you go deeper in your own business, it really, I mean, entrepreneurship is like you become a professional problem solver, right? And for me, the fun part about it is, well, like as we build with you, we see new holes and gaps and places for a system to come to be. Again, that might not be relevant for every other business that looks just like you, but because of how you and your team operate, here's a system. I think there's some fundamentals, obviously, as always, but that's why it's like some of this stuff, it just takes time.
Yeah, well, just creating a whole bunch of pink sheets, which we haven't defined for our listeners, so they have no idea what we're talking about with pink sheets, but just creating a little library of those so that you can pull from those to create your next webinar or your next book or even just a one sheet that's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's really, and just to kind of, for the people that are still in the dark on a pink sheet, it was something one of Taki's coaches he learned from, Matt Church. But like, think of it as like, imagine there's a piece of paper that when you fill it out, you could hand it to someone and the thing, like everything starts to move, right? Like you understand why that thing's important. You understand how to articulate it, what it's solving, what are the, potentially even the next few action steps that are required to get that result, what success looks like, what failure looks like. I mean, most of us don't spend the time thinking those things through, which leads to, hey, team, I have this idea. And it's like throwing a wrench into a spinning wheel, right? Constantly derailing the team. So I think it makes us as owners think, why am I asking this thing? Why are we doing this initiative? And kind of putting around some parameters that will even make it successful if it works.
So we're running short on time, so I want to ask you a couple key questions before we end this interview. One is, what are your favorite tools? And another one is, what are your favorite funnels? And we talked about one being the webinar funnel, but we didn't describe how that looks. But yeah, if we have time to go into both of those, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, specifically for like anyone that sells I think selling over the phone is the best. All of our clients sell over the phone, which comes with certain price points, but most service providers sell over the phone. Webinar into an application like consultation funnel, hands down the best when done right. And usually most people do the webinar part wrong, but any way to get someone into a consultation is what I believe to be the best. There are sometimes shorter paths. I think getting the most qualified lead, if you can get someone to watch 60 to 90 minutes of your content and then they still get on the phone with you, that's a good sign.
Now, would that be a particular type of webinar? Would it be evergreen or would it be live? Would it be like
I think it's
60 minutes with 30 minutes of Q&A? And is that Q&A recorded or live?
With our clients, we give them like a specific kind of framework for the conversation that can usually be within 60 minutes. Live, I think live has its place. It's not like an either or, it's a when do you use which. I think for most service businesses, they should have some form of evergreen webinar running and available all the time. And then periodically throughout the year, once a month, once a quarter, or if you're testing new initiatives, do live and bite your email list, drive traffic to it. So it's not like an either or. But for most service providers, you're not selling something direct. So it's going to have to be over the phone. So having an evergreen makes really a lot of sense because you're not pitching anything other than, hey, if this sounds like it's going to help you, let's get on the phone together. Here's how you get on the phone. Works really, really well. So that's my opinion. You said tool, or did you actually say software?
Tools. Like, could be software. It could actually be butcher paper or whatever. So
yeah, I'll give you a mix.
Okay.
Can I give like one or two?
Please, as many as you'd like.
One that I'm personally loving right now is Todoist.
Okay.
Our team has even started using it, but it's like a to-do, like just capture to-do tasks. I do it for personal and for work. I'm like, oh, I don't want to forget to do that thing. But to be honest, the thing that has changed my life and my business is going back to a pen and a notepad for my managing my week, my to-do list, my big initiatives. Every morning I go either to a coffee shop or, in my kitchen before the kids up, and I literally write my intentions, I rewrite my goals, I rewrite what I need to get done that day, and it's all on paper, and it is the hands down the best thing that I've ever done.
Oh, that is so cool. And I wish we could riff on this for 10 or 15 more minutes, but we've got to wrap up the episode. There's so many great resources on my other podcast in relation to this, listeners. So there's an episode on non-dominant handwriting to access your right hemisphere of your brain. There's productivity episodes from Mike Vardy and from David Allen and so forth. Oh my God, there's so much great stuff over in the Optimized Geek. I'll put links to all those in the show notes as well. So just to wrap up for our listeners, how do they find you, Greg, to work with you, get that 90-day program going for them and transform their business? Yeah.
So I would say, because most of you guys just are probably hearing of me right now, it would make sense for you to watch our training. As you already know, it's on demand. It's at system.ly/webinar. It's 62 minutes long. Yes, it is evergreen, but it is very interactive. You're going to download a workbook and you're going to be drawing some stuff. But we're going to break down kind of like our method, our model. So check that out. And then if after you watch that, you feel like I was speaking right to you, we invite you to get on the phone with us, and no hard sale or anything like that. It's like, if we can help you, we're going to share how. And if we can't, we'll be the first to tell you. So I would say go watch that first, because you'll feel me out a little bit and you'll know if it's for you or not.
Perfect. And then your main website is system.ly.
Correct.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Greg. This was enlightening and inspiring. And I hope now that our listeners are inspired to go watch that webinar. Hey, I just wanted to take a moment to give you a special announcement. On this very show, Marketing Speak, on November 7th, we have a very, very special guest. It's Seth Godin. Yes, we've already conducted the interview. It was incredible. I'm very excited for this episode to air November 7th. Be sure to mark it on your calendar and let me know what you think after you hear it. So thank you. And listeners, we'll catch you on the next episode of Marketing Speak. This is your host, Stefan Spencer, signing off.
Thanks for listening to the Marketing Speak podcast. Your host has been Stefan Spencer, 3-time author and leading expert on SEO and online marketing, whose client list boasts such brands as Zappos, Sony, and Chanel. Want to learn more about SEO, social media, or just generally how to build an online empire? Visit marketingspeak.com for an archive of past episodes, along with transcripts and show notes. In addition, a wealth of resources that include video-based training, screencasts, webinars, white papers, articles, and blog posts can be found on his SEO coaching site, scienceofseo.com. To reach Stefan, visit his personal website at stefanspencer.com or email him directly at stefan@stefanspencer.com. Until next time.